Thank you.
Good morning. This is exciting to see this many people. Luke and I put a lot of work in getting this organized, and already the people I've talked to just this morning, the enthusiasm, it's amazing. So, as my wife says, I need to be animated, keep your attention, all of that, but I'm going to read from a script, so you're probably going to be bored, but I'll do the best I can. So, there are over 200 people registered for this event. There's 134 in this room, 70 plus on Zoom. I'm Eddie Beck, president of the Chesapeake Bay chapter of Quail Forever. Together, Dr. Luke Macaulay and I organized this event, originating from conversations we were having about quail in the region and the potential extirpation of quail in southern Maryland. That started it, and I got convicted that we had to do more, something more than just talking about the problem. So back in January, I started contacting people, talking to Luke. He was on board with it, and we have come to what this is today. Today is a result of that vision, to bring together those who have an interest and can influence the lands that are managed and can be managed for early successional habitat and the imperiled species that depend on them. I grew up on a farm in Davisonville and remember my father would entertain us on a summer evening by whistling back to the Bob White's call. That was 50 years ago. I was 10 years old, and that's probably the last time I heard a wild Bob White in my home area. My children are on the backside of 30 and have never heard the call of a wild quail. An entire generation has lost this unique sound of nature. I hope my 4 grandchildren won't live through the same silence. Later in the program today, we're going to look at this map in more detail. The map is displaying the amount of public lands on both sides of the bay, along the Patuxent River corridors, upper ends in Howard County and Patuxent River State Park, east to the northern reaches of Delaware and down to the tip of St. Mary's County, across Maryland's eastern shore and into Virginia. The blocks of public land are everywhere. The vision and the goal is to connect these lands by bringing public land managers and private landowners together, creating a network, sharing ideas and resources in an effort to create the landscape scale restoration that needs to happen to save the imperiled grassland species. This is more than a vision. We've all seen and witnessed wildlife restoration. The white-tailed deer, turkeys, the bald eagle, and the black bear all come to mind. As a young child, I recall it being a big deal and a rare occurrence to witness or hear someone speak of seeing one of these animals in the wild. I believe with focused effort and partnership collaboration, the grassland species will be brought back as well. We've assembled a great panel of experts in the field of conservation and land management. I know nothing about managing public and private lands for early successional habitat. And here's where the script gets stuck. All I can do is try to influence those who can influence what happens on the land. I hope we all leave here today with a new excitement and enthusiasm to cause a landscape scale restoration in the region. I can already say, by organizing this, the world became a lot smaller. I've been in contact with people. One, Steve Darcy is Prince George County Soil Conservation District. I haven't talked to Steve in 40 years, and we connected again over this event. The enthusiasm is here. We need to keep it going. With that said, I want to introduce Dr. Luke Macaulay.
Thank you, Eddie. Let me do some housekeeping on the Zoom meeting here. Let's let everybody in. I'm going to can I make you a co-host, Taylor?
We make Sam a co-host.
Yeah. Bear with us real quick here. Do you want to, can you do that? I'm going to let Taylor handle that. She's much better at handling these things than I am. So first off, I want to say thanks to all the people who made this happen. Taylor is one of these people. Taylor Robinson, she's my right-hand gal at the Y Research and Education Center where I work. We have a few other people on board who we'll introduce later on in my talks. But I want to start by saying briefly, what were the goals, what were our objectives in getting this going? We had 5 things that we put down as I worked with Bob Long, Daniel Lawson, Dan Small, and others to put this together, and Eddie, of course. First, we thought we need to describe the problem of bird declines and even extirpation from big areas, particular northern bobwhite, but including other grassland bird species. Provide education on practices that can create and manage early successional habitat. How do we do this? Raise awareness and create enthusiasm. That was the third. Fourth, networking, allowing people to know each other, meet each other, make these connections so they can make things happen. And finally, demonstrate what Eddie described so well is emphasize the public land's ability to be an anchor for connecting private land efforts as well. I think public lands have this special role. We have many tens of thousands of public land acres to anchor and connect through to our private lands in this partnership. Hence the title, Public Land and Private Partnerships for Early Successional Habitat. So since we're talking about public lands, what is the role of our public lands? Is it to provide for sustainable use of forest resources? I think so. Is it to provide for livelihoods of multi-generational farmers and to have farming? I think so. It's challenging questions. There might be differing opinions on that, but there's certainly a role for that, I think. Is it to protect wetlands and water quality? Obviously, I think everybody would say yes to that. To provide recreation? For sure. If we're not connected to the outdoors, then how are we going to protect them? Is it to provide a diversity of habitat? Absolutely. One thing I found as I go through different types of wildlife management areas or natural resource management areas in Maryland, I find we have a lot of forest habitat, we have a lot of wetland habitat, and we have quite a bit of agriculture. One thing that we have a little bit of in certain places, and some places we have none of, is grassland, native meadow, wildflower areas that are managed particularly for early successional birds and birds that need this habitat. Not only is it the birds, it's all the amphibians, it's the insects, it's the pollinators, it's all sorts of other things that really depend on this habitat as well. So I think the lack of this type of habitat shows, and we're going to learn about that from Dan Small later, about the declining, and it shows in our declining bird populations, especially these grassland birds. And I think we all agree that if we're going to try and put something back together, we need to have all its parts. I hope this event will help us figure out how to get all those pieces back together by strengthening our knowledge, our interest, and to create action to make our outdoors an even more fantastic place than they already are. So with that, I would like to get started.